Welcome to Roll Call, a 126th Air Refueling Wing podcast of the Illinois Air National Guard at Scott Air Force Base. I'm your host, Technical Sergeant Brian Ellison. The Roll Call podcast focused on people, mission, and community. If you think your wingmen could use a little help covering meals this holiday season, let Airmen and Family Readiness know. You can call them at 618-222-5734 or hit them up on their new email address, 126ARW.AFR.mailbox@us.af.mil. Food baskets are donated by the USO and more support will become available. This week, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to go back and highlight a podcast that we did in May, spotlighting the 126th Medical Group response to the coronavirus. This features now former Commander Colonel Dr. Pam Fonti and now current Commander Lieutenant Colonel Troy Compardo. Joining them was Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Tony Truang, Chief of Aerospace Medicine, and he's an emergency room doctor in Redbud, Illinois. Each of them had a different view of the Med Group's work during the height of the Wing's COVID response. Lieutenant Colonel Compardo was currently on duty at McCormick Place when he did the interview. The first question I asked Colonel Fonti was, how long had she had airmen helping out?
Since the beginning, we had one physician, one medic go out immediately and one nurse practitioner shortly thereafter. Right now we have 7 medical group members that are currently deployed, and that includes Colonel Compardo. We have 2 that have returned. And I should also mention that there are other members in the wing who aren't medical group members, but they are medical in their civilian occupation. So we have a handful of those who are out there supporting the fight to help with setting up testing facilities or working with IEMA out there. Some of them belong to logistics or CE, so I want to give props to them as well.
Colonel Truang, you are in a unique situation in Redbud. Can you tell us about yours? You are Chief Physician and Flight Surgeon with the Med Group. What is your position there in Redbud?
So I'm a staff ER physician over at Redbud Community Hospital. It's a 40-bed hospital. And so we're basically the front line for anybody that comes in with any type of symptoms, COVID aside. But, if you're coming in, I know with all this social distancing, we've had a decrease in the amount of injuries like, broken bones, scabs and everything. But people are still coming in for shortness of breath and chest pain and things of that nature. Anybody that comes into Redbud emergency room immediately gets a mask when you're coming in. We have very limited to, I'll be honest with you, with no visitors. So if someone comes in the emergency room, if you can't speak for yourself, if you're a child or if you have some dementia, there's no visitors allowed. So it's very unique what we've been doing. Anybody that comes in with a shortness of breath, over the past week or so is pretty much getting a COVID testing, and then some come back. Most of them come back negative, and some do come back positive. And we take care of them. From the beginning to end as well. So.
How has that affected your service during this pandemic in the military with the Air National Guard?
This is. I think we're going to uncharted territory here. When the COVID outbreak first started and the call for assistance from state, Air National Guard assets came out, it was difficult for me to go to my employer and go, hey, can I go work for the Guard? It's difficult because this is a medical emergency. This is a medical catastrophe, a medical response. If I leave Redbud to go somewhere else, I'm hurting Redbud. So that's one of the unique aspects that I had to juggle within myself of going, hey, is this something that I can do? One of the most amazing things about being in the Air National Guard is that we work within our own community. And Redbud is considered an underserved area. So if I left Redbud, they would have been down an ER doctor. And if one of their ER doctors gets COVID, they can't go into work. So, there's even more limited ability there. So.
Right. Colonel Compardo, how long have you been up in McCormick Place?
Well, I was called to serve on April 3rd. Yeah, April 3rd. So we hit the ground April 3rd at the Thompson Center. So we were introduced to the director of IEMA and Homeland Security for the state of Illinois, which is Director Tate Nadeau. And so we had about 20 of us who went up there, and we essentially kind of picked the lines of effort that we wanted to participate in. McCormick Place, as a hospital administrator, both in my civilian side and in the military, the McCormick Place was the one that I was most suited to go and support. And so basically the next day I started integrating with the McCormick Place leadership team as both a representative of IEMA and her, and then also for liaisoning with the Air National Guard forces that were there, which was Joint Task Force Build. Lieutenant Kent's got a lot of press. He's from the 183rd or 182nd, I think. For his efforts there. So interfacing with them and liaisoning with the DoD forces, and got put into the unified, I kind of inserted myself into the unified command structure for the facility, which has been an amazing adventure, probably one of the lifetime for me for sure.
What's been, when you got up there, what was the setup like before? Because they hadn't opened up McCormick Place, had they yet?
No, so McCormick Place is one of the largest convention centers in the world, right? So it was kind of really, I've been there before for conferences. So when you go into this situation and you come into a structure, and they were only maybe 3 to 4 days into this, and it felt like they had been there for 6 years or 6 months. It takes, in the civilian side, it can take 1 year to 2 years to build a facility. And in the course of 3 days, they were already far along the path of building out a 3,000 bed medical capability, which would have been the largest medical facility in the country, field medical facility in the country. In fact, probably one of the largest healthcare facilities in the country as well. So it was really interesting. They just started getting some of the leadership structure in place there. We had a unified command meeting at 10:30, and they were still kind of norming and storming and brainstorming all at the same time. And it was an interesting mix of uniformed personnel. There was only a handful of folks like me there, the green suiters, so to speak. A lot of state agencies, city agencies. Chicago Department of Public Health was leading a lot of that effort, and just a tremendous amount of private industry too. It was amazing to see how everybody was coming together so fast to build this place out.
What was their reaction to how, Colonel Compardo, what was their reaction to how fast you guys were able to build out this facility?
Well, nobody had ever done it before, right? So everybody was really, frankly, quite amazed that everybody could work together so fast. So putting aside all your self-interest that may occur outside of a pandemic or a national emergency like this, you can get a lot of things done much faster. For example, we installed Epic, which is the electronic health record, in 5 days. Usually in the civilian side, that can take a year of design and planning and implementation to put Epic into as a solution, and they did it in 5 days. So it just shows you that how agile you can be and efficient you can be if you really put away your self-interest and just want to focus on at the end of the day taking care of people.
Colonel Fonti, you had said, well, maybe Colonel Compardo can even speak about this, but you said you had some visitors from Poland come over for this. Did they come to help, or were they just wanting to see how we did it?
Yeah, so the Polish medical contingent was very unique, right? So that's our state partnership program, of course, with Poland. There was several physicians in that group, several civilians in that group, and they really wanted to share best practices that they've seen. They were actually in Lombardy, in Italy, so some of them practiced there during that crisis. So they shared some of their perspective there. They shared their perspective from Poland and what Poland is doing to combat the illness. And they wanted to see what we were up to as well. They visited a lot of the testing sites. They visited the Office of Emergency Management in Chicago. They visited McCormick Place. So they made the rounds. I was their primary interface at McCormick Place for a few days, a few of those visits. And we did a lot of best practice sharing as far as what they're seeing from the data, what their lines of effort are going to be to combat the illness going forward. And so it was really more of a best practice share and just see how everybody's developing their strategy.
Sorry, you may have said this, but my cat is distracting me. She's stuck in the room with me. What what were the Polish doctor's impression of how we were doing here, at least, well, how you were doing in McCormick Place?
Well, frankly, they were kind of shocked and awed by it all. Poland doesn't have the resources that the U.S. has. And when they saw what we were able to accomplish in just 3 to 4 weeks at McCormick Place, I remember one of the civilians on that group said, he basically said, look at what America can do when they put their minds to it. They can do anything, right? And so even though they said, it looks like we probably overbuilt now, retrospectively, at the time, it didn't seem that way. And they took away, some of the capability we had, which was, these negative, specifically Hall B, which is our negative pressure tents that we put in with inline oxygen, medical oxygen, HEPA filters, mechanical beds. That's a very mobile capability. That's 750 of those tents that can be broken down and repositioned strategically across the state. And that's a concept that they're going to run with as well. And that they've already started developing. So, but frankly, they were just amazed about the resources and ability for us to pull that off in such a short amount of time.
Is Poland having as big a problem as the rest of the world, or are they? I guess, everybody seems like I don't know anybody that's not been untouched by this.
Yeah, I can't speak to. I looked some of that up. I can't speak to the specific data. I know they're struggling with it as well. They've taken some different strategies, and they took a really aggressive approach with sheltering in place, and they said their folks are really taking it seriously. Their culture is that if the government says do something, everybody does it and does it to the 100%. So,
Colonel Fonti, looking in the future, how do you think that will this be something that we train for now every year? That you think that once this is over, we take lessons learned and we build on this for training?
I don't know specifically if we will train for pandemics, but the SURF-P unit, which is housed at the 182nd.
What's those? What is that? Sorry.
The SURF-P, the Chemical Biological Enhanced Response Force Package. So it's a C-Barney Enhanced Response Force Package. The medical element of that is housed at Peoria at the 182nd. And I believe they have about 50 medical members that support that package, and they train and exercise all the time with the Army folks to be able to handle any kind of hazmat response. And they were the first medical entities to mobilize in support of it. So really the medics and providers and the administrator that we provided were to augment the fact that they didn't have enough individuals to meet the need for the state of Illinois. And again, our TAG and our governor were very sensitive to the fact that, like Colonel Truang had alluded to, we don't want to rob the civilian community of their resources. So I don't know if Colonel Compardo has been in the conversations about training specifically for pandemics, but every medical group in the Air Force trains disease containment planning on a required basis. My guess is those plans will be dusted out and looked at a little more closely as we prepare for readiness. That's my guess. The 126 medical group specifically, because we're a tenant on a host installation, the 375th medical group is responsible, just as the 375th Air Mobility Wing is responsible for disease containment planning. And of course, we don't create the plan because we don't own the installation or the facility, but we provide manpower support when needed. Should a pandemic specifically hit our area, or any kind of mass casualty or hazardous material response, we would be right there with the active duty helping, as long as the orders are in place correctly. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my guess for what will happen with the future.
Thank you, ma'am. Colonel Truang, but what can we do? I know people are getting restless and they want to go outside and they want to go out and what can we do, or what precautions can we take?
There's quite a few things. There's quite a few things that you can do to prevent the spread of the disease. The social distancing of at least 6 feet away is still something that's very important. But I think the most important thing that people are forgetting is washing your hands. Wash it often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. It's the most effective way to protect yourself. If you don't have soap and water, you can have hand sanitizer that has at least 60% alcohol. Avoid touching your eyes, your nose, your mouth. That's very important because we are always constantly, rubbing our eyes or touching our nose. So if you can avoid doing that, that would be extremely important. And the other key thing is, if you don't feel well, stay home. This includes visiting the doctor's office. I wouldn't show up unannounced at the family practice office. I'd call them and say, hey, is this something I need to come in for, or is it something that I need to wait it out? Coughing, if you have to cough or sneeze, coughing into your shoulder. Wearing the cloth masks I think are important. The cloth mask it was something at the very beginning. I think if you asked me 6 weeks ago, what do I think of cloth masks? I'd say it's helpful, but I wouldn't rely on it 100%. The government has really, well, I won't say the government, the CDC has recommended cloth masks mainly because of the shortage of the N95 masks. So cloth masks are extremely valuable. It doesn't block everything, but it does block a majority of things that you're sneezing out or when you're coughing out. So those are some good tips for you. When I know in St. Charles, I think they're kind of getting a little bit more laxed on the get-togethers, but I would still take those necessary precautions to prevent other people from getting sick or prevent yourself from getting sick too.
Thanks, sir. Colonel Compardo, what's shoot, I lost my train of thought. What's your capacity, not capacity, but how is your level? I don't know what the term is. How many people are in the beds at McCormick Place, I guess is what I really wanted, the simple way to ask.
I don't know if you well, I don't know if you saw the governor and the mayor came out with a press release yesterday saying we're going to start standing down McCormick Place. And so we're actually in the spot of now where we're kind of slowly discharging our patients we have. And the reason why is the McCormick Place is a convention center that has to go back to being a convention center eventually, right? So we're kind of slowly getting out of our patient load right now, which has never been very high, frankly. We did some community needs testing early on and found that the need for low acuity COVID treatment is really not what the community needs. They need a higher level of care if the peak occurs again. So the two big halls that we have, which are 1,700 beds and 500 beds that are low acuity, we're slowly going to reposition those assets strategically around the state of Illinois. So that's kind of the planning process I'm taking part in now. And then the Hall B, which is our more moderately complex patients, those who need more oxygen, inline oxygen, medical oxygen, that will stay on standby through kind of an undetermined amount of time as we watch the data over the next months and as we watch the elective procedures in Illinois start up again. So what's going to happen is hospital bed capacity for their surge capacity is going to start coming down while they start doing elective procedures. So we want to kind of monitor that to make sure they have a way to offload those patients to potentially McCormick Place or some of the other facilities that we have stood up actually around the Chicagoland. One thing I want to kind of go back to, we had this conversation about not pulling Dr. Truang out because he's going to, Redbud would fall apart without Dr. Truang. That's clear. But that's one thing that's been fascinating. McCormick Place, we wouldn't have been able to pull off McCormick Place if DuPage Medical Group didn't step up to help support the clinical aspect of that mission. And the reason why DuPage Medical Group was available is because all those physicians weren't busy anymore. So it's a medical group, outpatient physicians. So they saw their volume cut in half. And so they said, hey, we'll step up to help this mission because we have a lot of people who want to work more. And so they were able to donate or offer their services for, they contracted with the state for that. But it's kind of a fascinating part of this pandemic that you see is the decrease in volume of our outpatient physicians and how they've come kind of to the fight in a different way.
Colonel Compardo, what's been the people's reaction to seeing the military in Chicago?
Overwhelming support, frankly. I think it makes them feel better that we're there, right? We always get lots of compliments, like we always do. Thanks for your service. Thanks for your service. And I think we did a lot of great things at the testing sites, at the alternate care facilities besides McCormick Place. Just to see that show of force and support, I think the community just was overwhelmingly supportive. And it's interesting, you walk into these meetings, even myself, and they always point to me for the answers, right? So, the uniform gives you some kind of, influence, so to speak. And, we just use that to bring people together, frankly. So.
That's great. How many troops are there at McCormick Place? Can you, or about, I don't want to give a specific number, but just about.
Yeah, so roughly 60 or 45 to 60 are assigned to McCormick Place as part of task force build. Like I mentioned before, they're actually helping with some of the repositioning of assets now. And they're also kind of part of the greater Chicagoland efforts. We have three other alternate care facilities besides McCormick Place that they're helping build out. And so really the goal of McCormick Place was a short-term immediate solution with some moderate time frame there. But then the longer-term solution, at least through the fall, is going to be these other facilities that the teams help build out. They just haven't got as much attention as McCormick Place has.
Sure. Colonel Truang, just a question about testing. I just want to be clear.
Yes.
I think it's been clear already, but you have to have symptoms, right, to get tested? Is that how? Because people are like, I want to get tested.
No, that's a great question. That changes almost on a regular basis. At the beginning, yeah. At the beginning, you had to have, oh my gosh, I know IDP, the Illinois Department of Public Health, it was very strict. You had to have a known positive contact, and you had to have symptoms. Otherwise, stay home. Things have really changed, and things have really evolved in the past 4 weeks. I've seen numerous changes on a regular, several times per week. Every time I go in for an ER shift, I've got new guidelines. The most recent one was, I want to say it was last Thursday that it was implemented, that it depends on your occupation really. And if someone is sick in that area, then you can come and you can get tested. When that happened, I mean, our phone lines in the emergency room just exploded, and all these people were getting tested. And so there's a lot of you could drive up testing. So I know at Redbud, in that area, because we serve, Waterloo, a lot of Chester, big Randolph County, Monroe County. And if you call in, depending on where you work, if it's some sort of textile or factory, and there was a positive case, meaning there was an exposure, you can just drive up to us without a doctor's note, and you can get tested. About a month ago, it's such a unique question, because a month ago, you had to have a doctor's note to get tested. Well, a lot of the physicians out in the community, they were like, oh yeah, you feel sick? Well, here you go. They didn't realize that there was a huge shortage of testing kits available. So when they would come to the emergency room to get tested, the ER doctor would sometimes have to override and say, unfortunately, there's just not enough. We literally, at sometimes we were testing 30 to 40 patients a day. Sometimes we wouldn't have enough test kits. So we had to kind of pick and choose. It's a lot better now. Things are a lot, over the past 4 weeks, things have evolved. There's a lot more testing sites and a lot more testing kits available that I don't really see that we're having that same problem. You can say the same thing about our PPE as well. When the whole thing first started, we really had to use our personal protective equipment cautiously because we didn't have enough N95 respirators, masks going around. So there would be times where I would have to put an N95 mask on when I'm treating someone that's under investigation for COVID, and I would have to hang on to that mask, put it at a corner, and if I ever go back in to see that patient, I would use the same mask. I can't use the same mask on different patients. Each patient has to have a specific mask. Now it's a little bit better. We have a little bit more personal protective equipment, but I think we've gotten into the habit of good use. It's the nursing staff, the physicians, all the healthcare workers. If you're managing someone with active COVID, we get fully kitted up, from gowns to respirator to masks to eye protection to our hair, our gloves, to covering our heads. We're just fully kitted out. It gets a little bit difficult when a complex critical patient comes in. I'll give you an example. I had a patient that came in just the other day in sepsis. So when you come in septic shock, we have to do blood work. We have to do chest x-rays. We have to immediately start antibiotics. We got to do blood cultures. But at the same time, we have to minimize our contact with the patient. So oftentimes our amazing nurses would go in there fully kitted up, they would start the IV, start blood work, draw the blood work, and even assist with getting x-rays, so the x-ray technician doesn't have to come in. So they would roll in the portable x-ray, and the technician would stand outside the door and kind of direct them where to put it, and then the nurse would take the x-ray. Just some amazing things that the healthcare team has come together to try to minimize our risk. Because yes, we do want to take care of our patients; they're our number one priority. But at the same time, we want to minimize the risk that our people are getting as well too. So.
What have you seen any change in the amount of cases, Colonel Truang?
Any what?
Amount of change in the amount of cases have gone up, gone down, or in your area?
I have seen it's been constant. I want to say it's going up, just because I think we're testing more people.
Right.
I would say that the critical patients, every critical patient that I've dealt with COVID so far has had numerous comorbidities, like congestive heart failure, poorly controlled diabetes, uncontrolled hypertension. And those are our folks who are getting difficult. They're the ones that are getting having a more difficult time overcoming the disease.
Okay, I see. Sorry. Colonel Compardo, how have you guys been trying to stay safe up there?
Oh, we take the precautions like Colonel Truang's mentioned. We all are social distancing appropriately. We wear our cloth masks. Another way that helps us is, to Colonel Truang's point, a lot of people like to touch their face. That cloth mask can prevent you from touching your face too much, right, as well. So, and then, we do get screened every day. So we come into McCormick Place, or we come into the Thompson Center, and every day we get a screening. So if you are symptomatic, obviously you would be quarantined while you get tested. Thankfully, none of us have had any symptoms. And frankly, the McCormick Place has a lot of people coming in and out of every day, and we haven't had any symptoms from other workers there, which knock on wood. So,
what's that test like? I heard you didn't. What is that test like?
For the to be tested for the coronavirus?
Yeah, what's that? What's it go all the way to the back of the?
So it's a nasopharyngeal swab. So it's not. There's two types of swabs. A lot of people get confused. Oh, I'm gonna get swabbed, and they get a little Q-tip inside their nose. No. This is we have to get a sample that goes way back into your nose. It's a good. Oh gosh, I don't know how many centimeters it is because there's a line, but it goes way in there. You'll be uncomfortable for a couple seconds there.
Oh, okay. Well, Colonel Fonti, Colonel Truang, Colonel Compardo, do you guys have anything else you would like to add?
I would like to add just my unwavering gratitude for the two gentlemen here that you've interviewed today, but also all the rest of our medical folks that are helping either militarily or in their civilian communities to do everything that they can. We're a big family. We do try to stay in touch. People are definitely making sacrifices for the betterment of their communities. With Colonel Truang, we've missed him militarily because he's been so critical in his civilian role. And I'm sure that Colonel Compardo's family and his workplace is missing him as he's taken the opportunity to help keep the spread of this from coming down to visit us. At some point, I'm sure Colonel Compardo is going to be called back to his civilian position. So I just want to say thank you both to Dr. Truang and Colonel Compardo and everyone else who's out there making the sacrifice to keep the rest of us who are staying home safe.
Thanks, ma'am. Colonel Compardo, any idea when you guys think you're going to start seeing people come back to their homes?
Well, it's a little bit undetermined to some degree. I know in our positions with supporting the director of IEMA and Homeland Security, there's a lot of lines of effort that's going to run through May. But we're going to right size the force to make sure we have the right people in the right slots doing the right work, and we're looking at swapping people out and that kind of thing, so to give people a little bit of a break. So so I think we'll start seeing some people trickle back in, but the fight doesn't stop after the end of May when the presidential order for Title 32 steps goes away, or if it's extended. So we're just kind of waiting to see what the next strategy is.
All right, Colonel Truang, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, our people, the National Guard reaction to this has been swift. It's been stellar. I think that we are here to support our local community, and that's exactly what we've been doing. I absolutely, I was active duty for many years, and I joined the Guard back in 2013 now, I think it's been so long for me. And so I've been on both sides, and I absolutely love the mission of the Guard and the community involvement that we are in. On a side note, I've known Troy for many years. I consider him one of my BFFs, if you will, right? And everyone that's deployed out there, I try to call them on a regular basis. Everyone's in good spirits. And it's not just me. We're all supporting each other, whether Troy or anybody else is deployed out in Chicago, or if their families need our help or anything. I think we've really come together well, not just as a Guard unit, but as the National Guard as a whole. So I think we're doing wonderful work, and I'm very proud of each and every single individual taking their role in this.
That was Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Tony Truang, along with Lieutenant Colonel Troy Compardo, current commander of the 126th Medical Group, and Colonel Dr. Pam Fonti, former commander of the Wings Med Group. The Med Group had their change of command in September. Colonel Fonti has moved on to the Air Force Reserves, working for the Air Force Inspection Agency. She's one of the lead agents coordinating and performing unit effectiveness inspections for all Air Force medical groups. To find out what's going on around the wing, you can subscribe to the 126th Air Refueling Wing Public Affairs YouTube page. You'll see video versions of the podcast and the past town halls. If you want us to highlight something here on the Roll Call podcast, send us an email, 126.ARW.PA.MM.ORG@US.AF.mil. Thanks for listening to Roll Call, a 126th Air Refueling Wing podcast focused on people, mission, and community. I'm Tech Sergeant Brian Ellison.